Number 9. MARC FERREN CLAUD BIART. Modern technology is making it increasingly difficult to run from the law. It's hard to go almost anywhere without being captured on a home or business surveillance system. But one fleeing felon unknowingly did himself in by posting videos of himself on YouTube. 53-year-old MARC FERREN CLAUD BIART was an Italian mafia member who went on the run in 2014 when he learned that he was wanted for trafficking cocaine in the Netherlands. He moved to an Italian expat community in the Dominican Republic, where he lived quietly and simply moved on from his criminal past as if it had never happened. Biart's passion for Italian cooking would prove to be his undoing. He began posting videos of himself cooking alongside his wife on YouTube, thinking that he wouldn't be recognized because he didn't show his face in the footage. But the fugitive failed to consider his distinctive tattoos, which detectives recognized in one of his videos. That was all it took to bring Biart's leisurely new life to an abrupt halt. It's probably safe to say he regrets his decision. Number 8. Eduardo Zamora. 27-year-old Eduardo Zamora shot and killed his girlfriend outside a gas station in Harlingen, Texas last year. His girlfriend was 28-year-old single mother and nurse named Destiny Pemilton. He also shot a Cameron County Sheriff's deputy and a U.S. Marshal who responded to the shooting from nearby, leaving both injured. Zamora knew he had screwed up, and he wasn't about to stick around to face the consequences. He fled the scene, and then fled the country, and went to the town of Rio Bravo in Mexico. His Audi was found abandoned on the outskirts of Harlingen, but his time on the run was short-lived. A few days after his arrival, Mexican police from the Tamaulipas State Police Special Operations Group caught up with Zamora at a house just south of the border. Instead of cooperating with their orders, the fugitive pulled a gun and began firing, hitting 2 officers in the process. The team shot back, and Zamora was killed. Meanwhile, back in Texas, Harlingen police declined to provide any possible motives for the crime. Number 7. Brian Laundrie. Last year, headlines around the world reported on the tragic disappearance and murder of 22-year-old Gabby Petito, who vanished while traveling across the U.S. in a van with her boyfriend, Brian Laundrie. By the time Gabby's body was discovered weeks later, Laundrie had also gone missing, sparking a nationwide manhunt. But he disappeared for much different reasons than Gabby did. An autopsy showed that the young woman died in a homicide, and while Laundrie wasn't officially a suspect in the investigation, the court of public opinion had already made up its mind. Many, if not most people, thought that he had something to do with Gabby's death, and while nobody could say for sure, it was widely believed that Laundrie was on the run from the law, that he knew it was only a matter of time before Gabby's body was found, and he would have to answer for his suspicious behavior, including an incident a few days before her disappearance, when a witness called the police and claimed that they saw him hit her. During the ongoing hunt for Laundrie and the weeks after Gabby's remains were found in Wyoming, another set of human bones appeared in the Florida wilderness. They were identified as Laundrie's remains, and it was determined that he had committed suicide. Only Brian Laundrie himself knew why he vanished from the home he shared with his parents after telling them that he was going on a hike one day, as the heat of Gabby's case intensified. He may have been fleeing the law and decided that dying was the better alternative, or trying to survive in the wilderness when it came to his limited options for avoiding prison. Or it may have been his plan from the beginning to disappear and end his life. Either way, things went terribly wrong in order to lead to such a tragic ending. Number 6. Mafia fugitive caught by Google Maps. Most police chases don't last for very long before the person fleeing gets caught. But some clever criminals manage to evade the law for years, or even decades. One good example is Gioacchino Gamino, an Italian mafia boss who was on the run for 20 years before law enforcement finally caught up to him, thanks to an unlikely source. The convicted murderer, who escaped from prison in 2002, ranked among Italy's most wanted criminals. After slipping away from life behind bars, he lived a quiet, ordinary existence in the Spanish town of Galapagar, outside Madrid. Gamino got married, worked as a chef, changed his name to Manuel, and bought a fruit and vegetable stand. Detectives eventually figured out that he was somewhere in Spain, but they managed to pinpoint his exact location with the help of Google Street View, a navigation tool offered by Google Maps. The program's camera had captured a photo of 2 men talking outside the fruit and vegetable shop, El Huerto de Manu. Investigators noticed that one of them looked like Gamino. They confirmed his identity through some further digging, which led them to a Facebook page for the man's restaurant, which had his picture on it. Police recently arrested Gamino, who reportedly responded by asking, "How did you find me? I I haven't even called my family for 10 years. I'm sure he was surprised to hear their answer. What's the craziest thing you've ever found on Google Maps? Let us know in the comments below. And if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. Number 5. Nicholas ALAHVERDIAN. It takes immense resources and a great deal of cleverness to stay one step ahead of law enforcement. Even the most skilled fugitives usually eventually get caught, even after running to another country and shedding all elements of their past identity. Self-proclaimed child advocate Nicholas ALAHVERDIAN would know. In 2020, a widely circulated email claimed that the Rhode Island resident had died from cancer. The timing was suspicious. He had recently learned that he was wanted by the FBI for allegedly stealing the identity of his former foster mother, Sharon Lane. She had filed a complaint in Ohio, accusing ALAHVERDIAN of obtaining 22 credit cards and loans in her husband's name and racking up as much as $200,000 worth of debt. He was also wanted in Utah over allegations of sexual assault, stemming from all the way back in 2008. ALAHVERDIAN fled to Scotland, where he lived under the name Arthur Knight, to avoid being apprehended or an international arrest warrant. It was just one of numerous aliases he's been known to use in his attempts to weasel out from under accountability for his actions. It wasn't until ALAHVERDIAN wound up in the hospital at the end of last year on a ventilator with COVID-19 that his true identity was discovered through photographic evidence. Efforts are currently being taken to extradite him to the US so that he can finally face justice. Number 4. Joshua SWARTOUT. Last April, 23-year-old Joshua SWARTOUT allegedly stole a Kansas Highway Patrol vehicle and drove it more than 30 miles while handcuffed behind his back, hitting speeds of 100 miles per hour along the way. Even more surprisingly, he somehow emerged from the ordeal unscathed. SWARTOUT is being transferred to a detention facility following an arrest on suspicion of car theft when he saw an opportunity to escape. The officer driving the vehicle he was riding in pulled over to help out with a serious motorcycle accident. Joshua was riding in the front passenger seat with no partition or rear seat cage separating him from the driver's seat. He slid behind the wheel and took off while the officer was preoccupied with the crash. A high-speed chase ensued, but it couldn't last forever. The car SWARTOUT was driving eventually started to run out of gas, so he pulled over and continued the pursuit on foot. Police quickly caught up with him and apprehended him, but they didn't ask him how he managed to drive so skillfully with his hands cuffed behind his back. Kansas Highway Patrol spokesperson Trooper Todd Hillman told ABC News that he assumed SWARTOUT drove using his knees, which is admittedly impressive, especially since the chase involved driving along narrow stretches of highway with a ditch on each side. Number 3. Curtis BROVOLD. Curtis BROVOLD was in his late 40s when he became a wanted man by the FBI in 2000 for allegedly having sex with an underage girl in Minnesota. He was accused of meeting the 14-year-old online, grooming her, and then flying to Minneapolis and assaulting her in his hotel room. After being released on bond later that year, BROVOLD failed to show up for court. He was nowhere to be found, and the FBI tacked unlawful flight to avoid prosecution onto the man's growing list of federal charges. Detectives recently figured out that the former computer technician was living in Cancun and traveled down there to apprehend him. BROVOLD is now 68 years old, and after nearly 22 years on the run, he's likely to spend the majority of his elderly years behind bars. It's not exactly how most people imagine spending their retirement, but it's the price he will probably pay for his alleged crimes. And he's already had a few decades of undeserved fun in the sun, making any punishment he receives long overdue. In a news release, FBI Special Agent in Charge Michael Paul credited the agency's persistence and very long memory with their success in capturing BROVOLD, who is being transported to Minnesota to face long overdue justice. Number 2. Louis Walker. Police in Evansville, Wyoming were out on a routine patrol during the early morning hours late last year when they saw an SUV blow through a red light and jump a curb into a car wash parking lot. Officers followed the vehicle into a hotel parking lot where a passenger got out, but the driver ignored the commands and sped off with 2 other passengers inside. An hours-long chase ensued. Thankfully, there wasn't much traffic, so the pursuit didn't come at the expense of putting too many lives at stake. Knowing the SUV was headed in their direction, police in the town of Glenrock prepared ahead of time by laying a spike strip on the road. The vehicle popped at least one tire as it ran over the strip, but the driver was undeterred and got onto the interstate. He continued driving at over 90 miles per hour, even after one of the tires came off. The SUV continued to roll along on its rim, spewing sparks onto the pavement. At one point, the driver pulled over to let another one of the passengers out. The chase resumed as the passengers told police that the two remaining suspects had weapons and that they weren't about to go down without a fight. Officers once again deployed spikes, and the driver continued to evade capture. But you can't run forever, especially with deflated tires, as the remaining criminals in the vehicle were about to learn. After hitting some rocks, the SUV finally came to a stop. Police had chased it for 58 miles before finally taking the suspects into custody at gunpoint, and thankfully without incident. They found a loaded handgun in the vehicle. The driver, Louis Walker, admitted that there was also drugs inside the SUV and reportedly confessed to using cocaine before the chase. He faces multiple charges, including eluding police officers, reckless endangerment, and possession of a controlled substance. Number 1. Houston Police Department. One innocent man paid with his life for being in the wrong place at the wrong time last year when he was fatally struck by a Houston Police Department vehicle that the driver lost control of during a high-speed chase. It all started in the early evening one day in July, when a woman contacted the police saying that a group of young men held her at gunpoint and had stolen her truck. The dealership she had bought the vehicle at was able to trace its whereabouts, so she gave the information to law enforcement. Officers attempted to pull the truck over, but instead of complying, the driver sped off. The chase eventually ended with 5 youths jumping out of the truck and making a run for it on foot. Police managed to capture 3 of them and charged them with aggravated assault. Right as the situation was starting to wind down, an HPD unit veered off the road and crashed into a pedestrian on the sidewalk, killing him in the process. EMTs tried to save the man's life, but it was unfortunately too late. Both officers who were in the vehicle that crashed have been members of the force for less than 2 years. They were placed on administrative leave while the situation is investigated. This is just one example of the many tragedies that results from high-speed police chases. Researchers found that between 1979 and 2015, these pursuits killed at least 5,000 bystanders and injured tens of thousands more. The actual number is probably even higher according to the study, because there's no solid established system for keeping track of these disturbing statistics. But people are becoming increasingly aware of the problem and are calling it into question now more than ever before, whether it's worth it for police to chase suspects for anything other than extremely serious crimes. And there's a growing movement to discourage law enforcement from relentlessly pursuing people for minor offenses. On the other hand, some people have pointed out that when police pull someone over for a minor offense, it often leads to them getting caught for something far more serious. Many believe that letting people get away with small crimes by not chasing them only gives them the confidence to commit even bigger crimes and take bigger risks, putting even more lives in danger. Thanks for watching. If you'd like to learn about more harrowing cop chases gone wrong, let us know in the comments below, and be sure to subscribe. See you next time. Bye!